There's a lot to think about in your half gun section for Supercoach. The two top guys last year were clearly better than the others, but they both have early buys. So do you pick either one of them? Do you go for both of them? Do you pair them with someone who has a bit more of a favorable buy schedule? All the questions you need to ask yourself, but we will start off with Nicho Hynes, and we look at him coming in at 902.5k there, which is absolutely crazy considering how well he went last season, averaging 86. The big question mark is, can he do it again? Do you want your captain, which he probably would be if you popped him in your side there, as such a high scorer that could potentially lose a little bit? Because that 86 is so high there. It's a really big question mark if he can do it again. He did have the highest average in the game last year. It was obviously the big captaincy option. These are all the great things we can see about him there. Stable, really good team. I can see them in that top four clearly again. Potentially no origin. The 18th man might kill us a little bit. I just don't think a lot changes, but can he be an absolute superstar again? And those first 12 games, he only gets 4 games at home, which they usually play a lot better at, and so does he. A lot of his big scores have come from that first 12 games. So can he do that at the beginning? Do you have enough coverage in round 6 if you captain him? And they have a pretty tough start to the draw. The first 3 games are pretty tough against good teams. Can he come out and dominate like he has against lesser teams last year? Most of his hundreds were against some of those lesser teams. So can he come out and do it again? That is a big question mark that looms over his head. Nathan Cleary is your second guy. Obviously has an early buy as well in round 3. Comes in at the 80 average with a couple of lower games last year, and never really reached the heights that he did the few years prior. So there was very much less 100 games for him last year. I definitely think he can get back to that. He's been the top scorer for multiple years in a row, apart from when Tommy went absolutely nuts, averaging over 100 there. In a gun team, the main issue for them is just that maybe there's a little bit less direction with Api Coruscant not being there. It's going to be a big void to fill for Mitch Kenny and Sonny Luke to come in and do a great job there at 9 and really learn what they need to do. But I suppose the biggest role for them is getting that ball out to Luai and Cleary really quickly so they can do a lot of the work and then sort of pick their moments to have a run for it from dummy half. And with Sonny Luke being a little bit younger, I can see that being a little bit more of a difficult issue for him. Mitch Kenny being a little bit older, a bit more experienced, I can see him getting into that role straight away. But it will be interesting to see how they both play this. They obviously lose Kickow on that left as well. So do they go a little bit more right, or do they stick to that left with guys like Garner or Hosking just coming in and trying to replicate what Kickow does, but obviously not being as big a body as Kickow? Do they decide to do that, go left as much, or do they go right a little bit more to Cleary? They've got obviously Liam Martin, who will be there after his injury return. You've then got Crichton, and you've got To'o on that right side. So I think either way, they've got plenty of weapons. So I think Cleary's going to be that dominant guy again. Do you pick him over Hynes, being that 60k cheaper? Or do you go for Hynes in this one? That's the big question mark to play. And again, very similar to the wing fullback video, the fullbacks video there. Do you pick 2 guns? Do you get 1 gun and a mid-ranger? Because there are a few options in this half position, which we'll get to a little bit later in the video. So, Mitch Moses, he comes in at a 70 average. So, 10 points less than Cleary and 16 less than Hynes. So, really with him, you're looking for really to use that cash elsewhere if you're going to pick Moses, because I don't see him having a lot of upside. I can see the Eels being an okay team, probably slightly under where they went last year. They obviously went to the grand final, so probably like a top 6 type of team. But can he get the amount of try assists that he got last year, and tries and try contributions as well that he contributed last year there to get that 70 average or 75 there? Really, he's someone that has a consistent, really high attacking stats, and he's going to be a top 4 or 5 half. But do you look to start with him, or do you pick him at some point, maybe through the middle of the year when they have a buy in round 14? So do you pick him after that? Do you get him at sort of round 6 or 7 and get him all the way through to round 14? There's a few question marks surrounding the Eels, because they have a pretty tough start to the draw, and then hopefully a little bit easier through that middle period. And he's very much a streaky type of player, so could play a role in your team at some point during the year, I think there. And I just don't think he has enough tackles and run meters to be a super duper gun like the Clearys and the Hynes. Jerome Hughes is number 4 on this list. So he comes in at 721k and didn't have as bad of a year Supercoach wise as we think he did, because the year before he only averaged 72, but he played a lot better personally, and it felt like he was involved in a lot more. So COVID ball in 21 compared to this one here in 2022. Really didn't show a massive difference. So for Hughesy, I think that he could probably bounce back a little bit in terms of his actual play. Whether that translates to Supercoach or not, I'm not exactly sure, but you should be able to see him hit somewhere around that 70 mark again this year. And very similar to Moses, it's going to be the question mark of when do you pick him up in your side. They have a buy in round 9, so potentially round 10 could be a good one through that origin period to plug and play there. But the Storm do have a few buys in that section there. It was, speaking about guys like Harry Grant, who's obviously a great option, but from round 9 to sort of round 19, 20 there, they have a lot of buys. There's origin in that as well. So Hughes won't fare as bad, but there's a bunch of games there that he will miss. So there's a few question marks around these types of players, but do you trade one of the top guns and bring in a Hughes or a Moses during that period when they're not going to be playing in origin? Very interesting there. But the 13 tackles last year with 3 misses wasn't very good. I don't see much growth on top of that. He won't be a top 2 scorer, but definitely could be a top 5 scorer there as well. DCE, Daly Cherry Evans. So with him at 693, the average is 66 last year. He's usually a really amazing starter. He gets off to a flyer, even if the team's not going incredibly well. Be interesting to see what happens with Tommy if he comes back, because if he's playing there, we saw what DC was able to average, 79 the previous year when Tommy did really well. So they're definitely connected together. Manly had a very rough end to the year last year, losing all their games, and his scoring obviously faltered as well. But I think that this year with Tommy back, I think that he can play a little bit better and probably has a little bit more value compared to the guys like Hughesy and Moses. I can see him hitting that sort of 72, anywhere between 70 and 72 across the year, but their buy in round 2 is obviously a bit of an issue, and they need to improve as a team with Turbo being fit. So there's obviously a few things to think about with him, and definitely an option at some point. Maybe not from round 1, just from that round 2 buy. We speak about Cleary and Hines and their issues with having an early buy, but round 2 is even worse. So that's that. Jamal Fogg. So we got him at 658k. The average is 62.5. Is obviously solid for him. Does a little bit of everything. The goals is going to be lovely there that he gets in an improved team. So maybe an extra goal a game could be ideal for him. But for me, I just can't see improvement. Given this was his best average in Supercoach, I can see him probably hitting something similar. And with 62 not being a keeper type of average, I think that you can leave Foggs out of your side heading into round 1 here. But they're going to be solid. They're going to buy in round 8, so get 7 good rounds out of him, and not going to play Origin. So potentially at some point, but from round 1, I just don't see him as being a great option. Sean O'Sullivan. So he moves to the Dolphins. He obviously averaged really well in the game time that he got for Panthers last year when he got to play at 7. 62 averages there. Pros for him, it's his team now, so he's going to have to create a lot of the attacking stats, which is going to be great for Supercoach. The continuity there for him is going to be awesome. And you look at last year, when he did play with the Panthers, yes, it was a great team, but he was playing in majority of teams when the team was decimated. Apart from when Cleary got suspended, other than that, he was playing in teams that were really no better than any other team. So really, the 62 average is going to be pretty fair. No Origin is going to be cool, so I think you can watch on O'Sullivan to start. I really just don't think you can start with him. There's too many risks involved with a brand new team. And do they have the points in them to be able to do really well? That's what just scares me with him. And we just have no idea how that team's going to go. So we can probably wait a little bit there. Okay, we're going to slot Sammy Walker into the guns as well. He sits in at 623k, average just under 60 there last year. So we saw a big improvement from him when he moved to the 7 position, so halfback there. So I'm personally seeing about a 65 to 70 average from him in a really good team. So the big issue for him is the 3.5 missed tackles a game. But as a youngster, what we see is a lot of the time they struggle being a bit smaller. He is a smaller guy in general, and then thinner as a smaller halfback there. But we've seen a lot of the halfbacks really develop their defensive game and become sort of a 2.5 miss type of player. So that's going to be a couple of points in itself there. Missing that 1 or 2 less tackles a game and making them, for example, there's sort of 3 or 4 points potentially there in that one, which is going to be a great start. But we saw when he moved to 7, he was able to average around this mark. So really in a great team, I see him as being a great option. Just has the buy in round 4. So do you plug in a Walker and a Hines or Cleary, and they all have a buy close together around 3, 4, and 6? Do you pair Walker with someone who doesn't have a buy until a fair bit later? That's going to be the question mark there. So really for the guns, my top 4 there, I think Hines and Cleary, or top 5, it's going to be Hines or Cleary, whichever one you want to pick there, I think is going to do well. Cleary's probably a slightly better option given he is a bit cheaper in Supercoach here. We've got Sammy Walker. I think is going to be a great option this year. We saw what he was able to do the year before. He was able to average fairly similar to this, and that was without him improving into a more well-rounded halfback, which you saw in the back end of last year where he's able to average really well. So I can see him having the upside of a potential top 5 halfback in the game in Supercoach, and potentially in the real NRL game as well, and can make you some money and score well. So have him at number 2 clearly. And then we have Mitch Moses at number 3. He's always super solid, so he has to be up there as a gun, as a round 14 buy. So you can pick him up anywhere in the first sort of 6 or 7 rounds, and you're going to get a good stretch out of him with no origin. And then DC, I see a little bit of value as well. Okay, we move to the value guys. The ones a little bit more cheap, a little less expensive there. Lukey Brooks, so he comes in at 552, average of 52.5. So what we saw is some really nice scoring, to be honest with you, when with Pap on his left. I'm really going to be seeing somewhere around that high 50s for me is what I'm personally seeing him as. So maybe that 5 to 10 points of value at max there. Just having someone really strong to run off his left side is going to be great. Hopefully a bit of direction with Dewey in there as well, and Api Coruscant. Dewey being a little bit more of a permanent fixture in that 6th position. Brooks can kind of run his side. They'll switch between things a little bit, but look, Brooks is such a good runner of the footy. If he has some really strong outside backs on his left and he has Appy through the middle, Brooks can come through as well, as that little speedster coming in and finishing off tries that Appy can create. I can see Brooks averaging close to 60. So he's not going to be a terrible option, guys, but again, doesn't have that keeper upside. And we're just not exactly sure how he's going to fit in this great team, how the Tigers are going to fit together. Are they going to improve? Are they going to be better? I'm not sure, and he's always been around in those 50s marks. So is there gun potential? I don't think so. Hastings is an interesting one. So he comes in at 546k, average 52 last year. The big win for him, this one, is I think that right side's going to be really strong for the Knights if we're looking at it. So you got Brayley back at 9, so he's going to be able to conduct things from there, which is going to be great. Hastings can get some early ball. He's got Frizzell on his right. He then has Dane Gagai and Dom Young. So really, really strong guys outside him who can finish as well. So either contributions or try assists, or even being able to run the footy himself. Hastings is a super consistent runner of the footy. Runs over 100 meters a game for the most part. And it's his team now. So if he's back to full health with his toe, I can really see him doing really well. There's a little bit of contention at the moment as if he's going to kick goals or not. But if he is, he's clearly 60 plus. If he's not kicking goals, then maybe his late 50s. But only thing I'm really worried about with him is the fitness is there in terms of his toe, is if he's able to kick, which we'll see in the trials, which will be good. And then how good that team's going to be. So the Knights going to be decent at all. We move to the last 2 guys. Sean Johnson at 456k, super cheap, obviously at 43 average there. Probably a few points of value with goal kicking. It looks like he's going to get. It is his team, and if the Warriors can play all right, he's obviously going to score pretty well. But my main question mark is if the Warriors can get to some decent heights and him being able to average somewhere in the 50s. For me, a little bit scary with the team. He's a bit risky with injuries, and he came off a really bad year last year. So can he get back to some of the heights that he was playing before, or is he a little bit too old now to be able to get back to those heights? He's back home. He's got a couple of kids now, and doesn't have to worry about leaving New Zealand, which is great. So I think he's going to be happy back at home. For his family, everything is going to sort of line up a little bit, and he will improve. But how much of improvement? I don't think it's enough for it to be worth it on your side. And last one, guys, Lockie Ilias there, 363k. The average is 34.6. For him, he really improved as the season went. He's in a good team. He's got a late buy. I really just think he's going to get more assists. You can see in the back end of the year, he started getting a little bit more involved in the attacking plays and was able to average a lot more than he was to start. He was very much a low teens, single digits type of player early on. A bunch of missed tackles and stuff like that as well. You can see at the 3.3 a game. He's not a big attacking player in general, so I wouldn't expect, if he does take a leap, which we saw him take a leap in that second half of the season into the finals, if he does take a bigger leap, I can't see it being big enough for him to come into the side. And yes, he's position safe, but I can't see him averaging a 55, 60 type of player. Potentially a 45-ish to 50, and he could make a decent amount of money for you. But could you start with a player like this when there are other great options in the halfback position? You look at some of the guys in his value position, you could probably go, oh, yes, a bit more expensive, but I could take Johnson. I could take like Hastings and Brooks to go along with the guns. Whereas, you could even just pick the 2 guns in Hines and Walker, Cleary and Walker, Hines and Cleary, a few people are going with as well. So bunch of question marks there. as if you even think you should take someone like Lockie Lewis, and they have a tough draw to start. So I'd personally be avoiding for that reason, because we're going to be needing attacking stats from him, which is different to fantasy, where a lot of the base stats in terms of kicking and stuff is going to be helpful for him as well. But our number one important guy in this position is going to be Jackson Hastings, you guys. So unfortunately, there's no real cheapies in this position. The 5/8 position has Schuster, for example. But in this one, I think you need to go 2 guns, or a gun and an emerging gun in Walker. A gun and a mid-range type of guy like Hastings could be an option, given he has a buy in round 10. Brooks, if you're interested in him, as like a high 50s guy, but I think he is more likely to stay in that bracket than a lot of other guys there. But if you haven't checked out the private group, for those that are playing fantasy, it's the best way to jump in there. There's plenty of prizes up for grabs, guys, plenty of merch. And if you're just here for the Supercoach content, then awesome. Click that subscribe button, guys. Hit that notification bell, and you'll get plenty of messages about the notifications there about the Supercoach videos. And yeah, if you'd like to try fantasy, that would be awesome as well. Hope you enjoyed that one, guys. We'll finish off the rest of the positional analysis shortly.